And welcome back, Fourth and Long Fits. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another chat. But ladies and gentlemen, I know I've been going on with my off-season supporter series, but I had an opportunity I just could not turn down. Having a chat with some of the state sides has actually got me a connection to where I want to talk with coaches. As you guys know, I coach my team up here, so I have a awesome opportunity to chat with SANFLW coach Narelle Smith. Thank you for joining me, Coach Smith.
How are you, Coach? You well?
I am not doing too bad. I'm still in that early winter stage, so we're kind of doing some indoor training things with my group up here. I'm super excited. It'll be fun. We're crossing our fingers that we can get a women's side, at least a few women here to train up in Des Moines as well. But we'll take baby steps as much as possible. I know we have at least one girl who's planning on coming out, so it is going to be fun. But let's get into it before we talk the footy, because we're going to have plenty to talk on that. I always like finding out just the littlest bit about the person outside of the game of football. So just a real quick bio of a little bit about who you are outside of the game of football.
So I'm actually a police officer outside of footy. Um, I am turning 54 this year, and I joined when I was 18 and a half. So I'm a bit of a veteran, really. Been around a long time. So I'm a detective and I work in the city. So pretty full on job. I manage a team of about 35. And yeah, we manage all the serious crime in the CBD here in little old Adelaide.
That's fantastic. And another full-on job besides the one you already have, which is the coach of the Woodville West Torrens Eagles in the SANFLW. Well, we'll talk a little bit more specifically on that here in just the littlest bit. But I got to ask this. As an American, I caught on to footy a little bit later than most. So I asked this of you. What is your favorite part about the sport of footy?
Well, I suppose it's a bit like NFL and baseball in America. It's just part of our tapestry, really. There's not a lot of people that aren't into AFL. So I've always been into AFL as a young girl, and obviously, bit of a drive about why I want to coach and break down some of those historical legacies that it's just kind of the male domain space. So yeah, it's just kind of been in my blood for whatever reason.
That's fantastic. Absolutely love it. In fact, I usually flip these around. I got so excited talking with you. I lost my train. I lost my train in my thing. I forgot. I always ask this. Can you remember your earliest footy memory?
Yeah, I think it would have to be playing marks up with the boys at my primary school, which is Court Primary School. I'm South Australian, born and bred, never lived anywhere else, and so yeah, I do remember and I remember it being, a little bit odd that a girl was playing marks up with the boys at recess and lunch, but yeah, I certainly learned how to survive in a football sense.
You got battle tested quickly. Absolutely love it. So, all right, as I've kind of read, I did a little bit of research before we met on, because I wanted to find out a little bit more about you. Besides the fact that you're a coach, I got to hear this story because it sounds like you have such a rich history in SA when it comes to footy, especially on the women's side. So, could you tell us just a little bit of your story of in footy?
Yeah, so obviously there was no girls or women's football when I was a kid. Obviously, I've already disclosed that I'm 54. I've had the half century. And so, I played predominantly netball when I was a kid. I was a jack of all trades, really. Played any kind of sport, but there was actually no opportunity for girls or women to play footy. So I found out about our small local league, which was called the SANFL, so the South Australian Women's Football League. And I started playing when I was 26. So I played for a club called Edwardstown, and I actually played in 4 winning grand finals back to back to back to back. And then we were runners up in my fifth. And then I moved to the country with with work, and I was away for a couple of years, and then I came back and finished off my career, and I ended up playing, about 130 games. I played state footy. I was a All Australian a couple of times in the national competition. And I've won a best and fairest at Edwardstown, and I was an okay player.
Humble, I love it. Absolutely humble, I love it. Which is really funny because it's a perfect transition to the next one. I love this because for a few of my interviews that I've done with some of the AFLW players that I've had the luxury of chatting with, many of them are very humble. When I ask this question, they give me a team answer. So I'm going to give you a chance to humble brag here. Pat yourself on the back. Biggest accomplishment in footy so far?
Yeah. Oh, that is a really great question. I remember being part of a winning grand final, actually at Mornteen Kia Oval, which is quite ironic because that's obviously the Eagles' home ground, where we played Brighton, and we won by 1 point. And I remember I actually played most of my footy down back and spat into the mid for a little bit. And it's probably, I kicked a really good goal that day. And it was a really memorable day as a player to be involved in a 1 point win, because they're always fun if you're on the right side of the ledger. And also, I had a little snippet of individual brilliance within that, because it was, like a 30-metre goal. I'm a left footer, running out of a pack and kicking a pretty clean goal. So that was pretty nice. And from a coaching perspective, probably my first flag as a coach was really, really special to me. I'd come into a club that was a cellar dweller kind of story. Really worked hard to help the girls be better, and we had a really dominant win in our first flag. It was the club's first flag in the women's space, and it was just with a really special group of players, and it was just a really special moment.
Fantastic. I love it. Both player and coach, great accomplishments there. Fantastic to hear. I love those stories. So I asked this, for some people, there's so many different stories of players that they don't want to, they're done with their playing career. And some just, they go out into the pasture, they enjoy their lives. But some of us are crazy and we decide, let's hop on the bench, let's grab a coaching board and let's coach. So I kind of ask, what was it that got you into footy coaching? Was it something you had always envisioned yourself doing, or was it just kind of a spur of the moment thing?
A couple of parts to it, really. I think that I was always that type of player that you could tell that I would probably end up being a coach. I think we all know those types of players where they're pretty instructional, and they want to unpack the game as a player and try and to help the team or help themselves develop. Or so I don't think it shocked anyone that I said that I wanted to coach. I really wanted to have a bit of a mentorship and not be a head coach straight away. But where I was ended up my playing career was at Greenacres Footy Club, and there was no one else that wanted to coach them. That's basically the bottom line, which is really sad at the time. And I was nowhere near ready to be a head coach, but necessity. Of course, I didn't want to let anyone down, and I just jumped straight into that. And I always tell this story, like I was a terrible coach to start with. I really wanted, because I really wanted everyone just to play like me. And like I was a bit I was a real physical player, and pretty I'd be in and under, and do all the hard, heavy lifting and stuff. So I wanted everyone to play like that. So I learned really, really quickly to embrace the diversity of players, their individuality, and seamlessly get that into a team scenario. So Yeah, it was more necessity, but I think that it was something that I was always going to do. I just started as a head coach earlier than I wanted to.
Yeah, and it happens, and sometimes it's you have to you kind of earn your stripes eventually, and sometimes it's fate almost. It's really kind of interesting to think about that. So
Hmm.
you kind of, as you said, you weren't
Hmm.
100% ready. So I asked this, what do you think was the toughest? What do you think is the toughest part about coaching footy?
Oh, that is an excellent question. Now, as a coach now, um, I find selections are um, a tough arena. And, as the head coach, you bear a lot of responsibility to make the final call about who actually plays. And so, say for example, my squad at the moment is, around the 60 mark because we run two teams. Obviously, we've got a development team and the league team. And, I watch these athletes and they absolutely give everything to you. And there's some of them that don't get to play. And there's some of them that don't play in the team that they want to play in. And, it's actually really heartbreaking as a selector and a coach to have to say, well, you're not playing this week, and work through the emotions of that for the player, and then make sure that you don't over focus on that side of what's going on, and really get your head in the game, and support and get your playing group through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand it. And sometimes you can even use it as motivation to get them over the hump sometimes. So everything kind of it's a
Mm-hmm.
fine line sometimes, and it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes you get burned on both sides. I'm always interested on this. Is you said you've been coaching a while, and you're in. I mean, other than the AFLW, you're in one of the best leagues when it comes to it in the SANFLW. So I asked this: who's the best player that you had the pleasure of coaching so far in your coaching career?
Oh, gee, that's a good one.
I'm making you think today.
Look, if I Yeah, you are making me think. And don't forget, it's the sun's not even up here, even though it looks like it's going to be about 40 degrees here today, so it's going to be a warm one. Um, Within the AFLW space, one of the best players I've ever coached is Ebony Marinoff. She is just the most driven athlete I've ever met, physically, mentally. Um, yeah, and I often tell this story about I think we were playing Carlton at Norwood Oval back in 2019. I think it was 2019, and she'd actually split her tongue open, and it was a nasty, nasty injury.
Mhm.
And she comes to the bench and she stuck her tongue out. She said, Ro, is my tongue all right? And I was, yeah, mate, it's fine. No worries. I said, just pop down with the doctor as I'm going, oh my God. And then they just stitched it and she just came back out and played. And you didn't even know. And like I just thought, gosh, I mean, she's just so driven to win. And in the SANFLW space, I think the best athlete that I've coached in that space is probably Annie Falkenberg, and she's our captain, and she just has this amazing balance between responsibilities of being a leader, responsibilities in regards to uh, the drive for success of our side. With our fan base, our board, our club, but also the ability to be that conduit between the playing group and the coaching panel. And then within that, she's just an amazing athlete, amazing footballer who's still developing in her own right, but just continues to amaze me about what she does.
Fantastic. I love this story about Ebony Marinoff. She is tough. She is tough as nails. I absolutely.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorite players to
Yeah.
watch. One of my favorite players to watch, and such an incredible player. And absolutely. And I got to watch the documentary Fearless, and how physical she is even at
Mm.
training. I think there was one scene I saw where she actually chipped
Yeah.
the tooth or knocked the teeth in of Alana Woodward, and she's like
Mm.
apologizing and all that. So it was, I had to chuckle a little bit
Yeah.
hearing that story of her getting her tongue, and remembering that
Mm.
story from Fearless. I thought that was absolutely great. So we're gonna go to this season,
Yeah.
Woodville West Torrens this year. Again, you're in your season now. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but can you describe to me your team this year a little bit? What's kind of the atmosphere of it? Is it a good group? Is it a fun group? Is it a very business like? Kind of describe to me your group this year.
Yeah, look, if you have a look at our season last year, we kind of improved, and we were on the trajectory of getting closer to the top teams in the league. Was going the right way. Our last 6 weeks of footy, I think we lost about 4 games within a kick, and we were really around the mark where we weren't at the start of the season. So we did a lot of reflection over the off season and really came out with an attitude of improving our athletic profile in regards to our ability to run games out, because we just kind of stammered in Q4 a lot last year. So our fitness base now is incredible. We at the end of last year, I kind of had a bit of a chat to some of our board members and said, if you really want us to improve in the professionalism of our program, then we need some GPSs, so we can track exactly how we're actually, we don't have to guess about what we're achieving in that physical space. Got a high performance manager that is with us full time, which is great. That's a really critical piece of the puzzle. And so we've tracked our girls this season, this pre-season, which is probably about 4 months worth of solid training 3 times a week. And on average, we've covered about 420 Ks over that time. So they've ran a lot. And we did a bit of a breakdown just prior to round one. And, 30% of that was conditioning blocks and 70% of that was football. So they've done a lot of work in the football space, but also whilst building the athletic profile. So we're really happy where we are in that space. And now it's just putting it all together and, executing football.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely fantastic, and it's great that the club was able to help you out with that. That's fantastic. So, as you kind of said earlier, you're a police officer by trade, and as I've kind of in the interviews that I've had with the AFLW players and even Ali Farrell from Norwood, is that unfortunately you women still are not full time either coaches or athletes, which again I will say this: if anybody that watches this channel, they may get sick of it, but I say it all the time, this needs to change as soon as possible, because I think women's footy is a growth opportunity for the AFL, the SANFL, all of the leagues, because I think women's footy is a growth area with all of the young girls coming up. I think this is a growth area. I hope this
Yeah.
changes. So to stay in that, as you said, you're a police officer. What's your typical, like, take me through your typical day of training? Like how does getting to training after maybe a day of being a police officer, how does that kind of work? And then what's a typical game day for you? Do you usually get the days off on your game days, or do you have to kind of juggle that as well?
Yeah, look, I'm really fortunate because I've been around so long in the police. So I'm actually a day shift worker because I'm part of the management team. So it really lines up with my coaching, and I've been doing this role since 2013, no, 2014. So it's probably that was the time where I probably really switched to being a bit more serious as a coach. I wasn't just coaching local league. So that all kind of lined up, and it's just pretty long days. I have some long days. So, I'll generally start work at between 7 and 8 a.m. and then I'll be out of the door as soon as possible, depending on if there's any big jobs happening. I always have a plan B for someone else to take training if I'm not there, but touch wood, normally it's okay. And then I'll go straight to footy. I always like to be at training at least an hour and a half prior to. Gives me some really good quality time with the individual athletes if they need it. They always know that I'm there early, so if they want to see me, they come early. And then I can also, have a coach panel meeting prior to training just to nut down anything else that they're thinking about, or if there's anything about training that they want to change. But the key for me is being planning, and I'm very well organised. Probably this year, being my second year at Woodville and being in the head coach role, I'm even better. I normally have my whole week's training planned and into training plans, down to our football manager down at the club to have it all printed and ready. So we just walk in, and it's basically a bit of a machine, really. Walk in and away we go. So, but on training nights, I normally do like a double shift, to be honest.
Long days, but that's not a bad thing. You enjoy it, and the coaching is always fantastic there. So we go from that to, uh, I know we're starting this year, but let's just rewind back just the tiniest bit. Can you tell me a little bit about last season? A little bit. You kind of, as you said, you went to the board saying that you needed GPS to kind of help track the ladies when it comes to their athletic performances. So, kind of, what were your thoughts on last season? Was it difficult for you kind of going through it, just considering it was your first season at the helm at Woodville West Torrens?
Yeah, look, it was as I said, we had those close losses late in the season where, it just would have been really nice to get some reward for the players in particular to get those over the line. But they felt, and like we do player interviews post season, and they were all really happy with how we improved and how we were actually playing, and really executing football at a bit of a higher level. So happy with the season, satisfied with our improvement, but we also know that like this season, it's really critical for us to start to actually get some wins on the board and really push for finals. So that's probably where we're at the moment. And as you know, we played on the weekend and didn't quite execute where we wanted to be. So we're currently at the drawing board, just trying to reset for round two.
Yeah, well, round one, you get some of the bugs out of the system, and it's not a bad thing. So, well, we'll stay on last year just a little bit longer. And I love this question because every coach kind of handles it differently. I know it wasn't probably the greatest when it comes to win loss, but would you still consider last season for your first year a success?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and I always say that success is really subjective. Because there can only ever be one premier. There can only be four teams. There's only 50% of the comp actually makes finals. So from where we were, I was really, really happy with how I came into the club. They had some not culture issues, but there was some a bit of a breakdown in regards to what being in a semi-professional program looked like for the playing group. So there was a bit of a shift that was needed in regards to like trademark and culture, and so that was something that I worked really hard on with my coaching panel and the board and everyone involved at Woodville. Was just to get that back on track, because if you can make sure you have that great foundation of expectations of behaviours and coaching, training standards and all that kind of stuff, that builds a really good platform to move towards winning and being a successful club. So we were really, really happy with how that played out. The list change has been quite significant. But what I did when I first started at Woodville is I basically kept the whole list that were there and gave them an opportunity to actually move with how we wanted to be and what we wanted to look like. And, and that of course brings change. And, I think I counted on the weekend, our round one team, we had 7 debutants, and I think there was about 5 players left from our round one team the year before. So, big changes in personnel, big changes in expectations, trademark, and what we look like as a team and a club. And with that, so you have to say that we were really successful in developing about what we want to look like moving forward.
That's great, and it's actually a great transition for me for my next question, because as we kind of said, your season has started. So I'm a little late when it comes to the party and asking this question, but your thoughts on this season, because as you said, you've had a lot of turnover, but you've had some change that I think I can tell you're very positive on. So is this a group you think can make finals? Or is this another year where development is going to be key? If you make finals, it's a bonus.
I think we're somewhere in between there. I think we're, the development piece. Well, I think if you're not developing in some way, then you'll get left behind really quickly, because I think the standard of SANFLW in particular has just skyrocketed, even just from last season to this season. I know we had a quick chat prior to getting the camera rolling about the North and Norwood game on Friday night. It was just an electric game. It was fast, it was skillful. And so, you really need to always be developing any way you can, any kind of tricks or, things that you can help the players be better. You need to really do that, and not be stubborn, and just go with what has always worked. You got to try things. And but for us as a club, we want to play finals, and we have to learn to execute how we want to play. And we didn't quite get that done on the weekend, but we're still pretty buoyant and confident that we'll be around the mark of finals. But yeah, we just need to tweak a few things.
Yeah, definitely. So, and then another great transition, because I wanted to discuss this a little bit. I know, unfortunately, you came just a little bit short when it came to your game against Central Districts this weekend. Again, a tough opponent, never an easy side, the Duggies. But so really quickly, you've had a little bit of time to kind of process it. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to sit down and watch the game tape a little bit. So, what are your just kind of your initial thoughts on how your team played this weekend, and are there improvement areas? Were you happy in any areas? Kind of what are your thoughts just overall on this weekend? I know a tough loss to Central.
Oh, it was a tough loss. Like I'm okay. You can't win every game, and you will have losses, and that's just a part of sport. But yeah, it was just kind of the way we lost. We didn't execute the way we wanted to do, especially our foot skills. Our foot skills were just, not to the standard of our expectations. Like both the playing group and the coach panel, and probably the club in general. I know there was a couple of times we just kicked it straight back to them in our D50 and turned it over, and just put ourselves under unnecessary pressure. So, and then at the other end, I think we missed probably 4 genuine scoring opportunities, and you kick those 2 to 4 goals, and the whole game's on its head. So, but I was really pleased with our ability to compete at the contest, and I think you could definitely tell that our athletic profile has changed, and the girls ran the game out. It was a really, really hot day. Obviously, SANFLW's played in the heat of our summer. So, I was really pleased with that. I thought we had some really good connection plays at times. We were just a little bit loose on defense. When we turned it over, they were running in waves, and we just kind of didn't cover off as best we should have. But yes, I've watched the tape. Obviously, I always say with my 2 jobs, I just need to make sure I'm really prepared. So we have a review tonight, where we'll go through a few things and just reset. And as I said before, we're our first 3 rounds are Centrals, who I mean I think they're probably one of the best improvers in the league in general. And then we've got Glenelg, who are 2021 premiers, and then we've got North, who are 2022 premiers. So we don't have an easy draw the first couple of games, but yeah, we really need to tidy up a few things if we're going to compete with Glenelg on the weekend, who obviously had that loss against West, so they'll come out with the steam coming out their ears, I suppose, and see us as an opportunity to get their season back on track.
Oh, it'll be an interesting game. I think you'll notice when you watch the Glenelg West game, we were saying before, you haven't had a chance to watch it. It's very similar. I think Glenelg had the same issue with West that you guys had with Centrals. There were a few foot skill issues and a few issues when it came to going forward. It kind of it was being kicked to the opponent a little too much and was always constantly being brought back in. Again, West is a good side, but whether or not Glenelg was really as bad, I don't think so. I think it was a really good game of footy, just a few issues there. So just from a casual observer on the other side of
Yeah.
the planet, if you want a little bit of
Yeah.
oppo research there. So my
Yeah.
next question, I absolutely love this because for me, in all of my discussions with fans and with players and staff of AFLW and SANFLW, I feel that the women's game is much more connected to the fans than the men's is. And again, it's no disrespect to the men's at all. So I like asking this question. Do you have a really good story of fan interaction, like a young one or a parent or anything like that? A really good interaction that kind of it warms your heart a little bit.
Oh, look, it's probably more a question for players. I think they have a lot more connect um, to the fan base, and in particular the AFLW. SANFLW is a really emerging space with our fan base and who's watching us. At the season launch, they actually said that they had 1 million hits for the preview video of SANFLW for this season, which is really heartening, and shows that we're building our own fan base at the semi-professional local level. And I think they had at one point there was 1.28 million that was watching the grand final last year, which was shown on free to air. So our fan base is lifting in the SANFLW space, but in the AFLW space, I remember a young guy. He had a coach's signature, like a piece of paper that he was collecting all the coaches' signatures. So I got to sign a piece of paper for that young man, which was pretty exciting for me, as no one really asked for my signature anywhere. But I feel like the women's space in general, they're so appreciative and grateful for anyone that's interested in what they're doing. And you'll often hear when coaches come into the space, in particular male coaches, they just love coaching the women because they are grateful and they just really want to play the game. And anyone that takes an interest in them, they'll listen and to try and be the best version of themselves. So and for the fans, it always amazes me, how people, you might hear some negative people around women's sport in general,
Mm-hmm.
but then they're always watching because they want to give their opinion of, whether they're good or they're bad, and I
Mm-hmm.
go, thank you, like you're watching, which is, that's what we want. We want you to be watching, like, and you're always going to expect, some difficult critiquing and some, positive critiquing. So yeah, I think it's a real funny kind of thing.
No, if I'll have to send you a video. You'll have to go to some of my AFLW ones because I've addressed it many a time. I have a friend, a friend over
Yeah.
here who works for the USAFL. He calls many of those people knuckle draggers because they're the macho men that
Oh
think they
yeah.
know everything.
Yeah.
And I've said numerous a time that
Yeah.
I think the women's game, honestly, this is the growth opportunity, but I just love it because these girls give so much. There are times I've said it numerous times. I don't care who I offend saying it. I think the women go after the footy harder than the men do. And I don't care who gets mad at me saying it because I appreciate it. Absolutely love it. You've coached youth basketball over here. And I have to say, when I was working with young women, I think they are much more perceptive. They want to learn even more than men do. So I
Mhm.
completely agree with you on that. I absolutely love it. It is fantastic. Keep up the great work, coach. It is fantastic to see. And again, I think I added at least 5 or 6 hits on that SANFLW preview video. I watched it several times. I thought it was
Yeah.
fantastic. I'll add, I think I can add 5 to that particular total on that one. So I'm
Yeah.
as I keep track of the
Sorry, my
AFLW a
dog.
lot.
My dog's barking.
It happens, trust me. I had a chat with Steph
Yeah.
Kiochi and her dog hopped in the middle of the episode and laid down. So I'm used to it. It is absolutely not a problem. So I asked this coach, as you said, you have developmental and you're working with young women. I want to know who is a player on this year's Woodville West Torrens that people should be looking out for because
Mhm.
they'll be donning an AFLW jersey maybe soon.
Mm. Oh, look, the obvious one is Shanae Goody. Um, she's obviously, gee whiz, it's hard to actually describe how talented this kid is. She'll. It's no secret she'll end up on Port Adelaide's list just because of the way the draft's set up. Unless
Mhm.
she nominates in another state, but I'm pretty sure she'll stay home. Um, she's just one of the most natural athletes, footballer, and she's just such a pleasure to coach. She just, um, she like say for example, she'll go, I'm not sure what team you're going to be selecting me in this week, but if you are, like, I'd like to, do this with the team, and I go, oh my goodness, you're so humble. Like, because you could start in an AFLW team tomorrow, let alone you'll be playing in our league team. So yeah, and it's really great because I kind of challenged her a little bit in the preseason that I thought that she could probably be pushing herself in the high performance area a little bit more, because she was really happy to run in the middle of the pack, and it was really pleasing to see that she pushed herself up in some higher groups. And yeah, she's just an absolute jet.
Yeah, I remember when I was watching. I watched all the captains' interviews from that Sample W preview, and I'm pretty sure at least 2 or 3 they had said who's your breakout player, who's your player on another team you think could be a best and fairest, and I believe Sinead was mentioned at least a couple of times. So you are not the only one with keen eyes on a young talent. So I will definitely keep an eye on Sinead this year, and I
Yeah.
hope to see her on an AFLW roster very soon. So we go from player. I'm gonna have fun with you, coach. I'm gonna ask this: if for some reason Port Adelaide or Adelaide's coaching job came open, would you look to potentially
Mm-hmm.
become an
Mm-hmm.
AFLW head coach? Or do you kind of like being able to and staying in the sample W?
Yeah, it's one of those things that the you just have to do what you do, and then if opportunity comes along, then you entertain whatever comes. So um, I I have had a couple of interviews for those jobs, and I haven't been successful. So what I do is I just really focus heavily on helping the athletes that I'm working with now, and really having an impact on their careers. And if it happens for me, it happens, and if it doesn't, then I feel really grateful and fortunate that I'm able to coach at the level just below that and influence players' careers. And, hopefully along the way we can get some success for the Woodville West Torrens Footy Club, because they are just an amazing bunch of humans. And, the board and Christine Williams and Dave Cuzner. And, we're so desperate to have some success for our club and, align ourselves with the success of the men's, because they've been really successful as well. So, yes, it is, like it's kind of a itch that I've got to scratch, but I'm also really realistic that that may never happen, and you just need to be happy with what you're doing and the outcomes of what you do. And I'm still really lucky to be at this level, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree. I mean, and there's only 18 head coaching jobs in the AFL, AFLW, and then as you said, there's only eight,
Yeah.
technically only eight jobs as we speak in the SANFLW. So it is nothing to sniff at to be a SANFLW coach. So many congratulations
Mm-hmm.
to you, coach. Again, second season, much luck. So we're gonna go to the fun part of the podcast, some fun questions that are gonna make you think a little bit, but I can't wait to hear this. So I'm gonna take you out of the coach's role for just a second. I'm gonna install you as the list manager. You get to have some fun here. I know we're around in, but we're gonna have some fun. I need you to think about of the other seven clubs in the AFL and the SANFLW. If you could steal one to bring on to Woodville to give you that little bit of push to maybe make finals this year, who's that one player and why?
Oh, that is a great question. If I'm thinking of a couple, I definitely wouldn't mind Lana Schwert from Norwood. Um, I just love the way she goes about it, little win and under.
Mhm.
She just, yeah, she's exciting. Um, oh gosh, I wouldn't mind a nice key forward. I'm just trying to think who I'd like to pinch. Um, yes, that's a good one. Oh look, I'm just going to go with Lana, because I do love her ability to win the ball, and I just think she's a really nice kid. And uh, most of most of the players that I always speak to, or when we're doing our own list management, is more about humans than talent, a little bit of both. So
Mhm.
we were pretty lucky to pick up a few this year. So yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right. And as the coach, I've never done this with a coach. I've always done this with players. So it's always interesting to hear this. So I'm gonna first player recognition. I'm gonna give you a few monikers of people, and I want you to tell me the first player that comes to mind when you hear it. Okay. So first one, who on your playing list right now would you say is the team mom of the group?
Oh, it's a bit of a toss up between Leah Cutting and Amy Blandon, but I think Blando gets the nod.
Already. I gotta ask this favorite one. Who is the funniest? Who's got the best jokes of your playing list this year?
Oof. Cher Waters is pretty funny. She's a little bit of a joker. She's a funny little gal.
Awesome. This one could be interesting too. Who do you think is the toughest?
Ooh, toughest. Liv Evans.
Awesome. Next one. Who is the social
Easy that one.
butterfly? Who's the person that everybody enjoys being around?
Young girl called Grace Grierson. I feel like there could be anything happening and she'll just smile and start to giggle and dance. So yes, Grace.
Awesome. Most emotional. Who's the easiest to get the waterworks going?
Brooklyn Craft. Yes, she certainly is an emotional little ball of energy.
There's nothing wrong with that. All right. This is my favorite one. I love this. Who's the quirkiest? Who's the most unique unit on your group this year?
Oh, that is a great question. Um, geez, I'd have to have a look at the list. Little quirky little player. Um, think I will go with Poppy Waterford. Very quirky. Love her energy. She's got some beautiful energy. But yeah, she's the quirkiest.
Love it. And then the last one. This isn't always easy. Who's the best cook? Who's the one that you want to go over and have dinner with?
Oh, Annie Falkenberg. Or Annie and Leah Cutting. They're both my top people for sure.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, we've had our fun with the coaching. We've had our fun with players. I want you to go. I want you to put your fan hat on a little bit. As I've told many in the podcast, I've
Mhm.
never been to Australia. It is on my bucket list. I want to get to AFL,
Mhm.
AFLW. I don't care. I want to get to some footy games over in
Oh.
Australia. So I'm asking a few questions to kind of get my research ready. So when I go, I'm ready. So I'm an American. Americans, we love
Mhm.
our food at our sporting events. So I ask this: when you go to the footy as
Mhm.
a spectator, what's your go-to food when you go to the footy?
Oh, that is such an easy question. Like you have to have a pie with sauce. Easy. Meat pie with
Hmm.
sauce.
You'd be surprised. The
That's
the
the
bucket the
go-to.
bucket of hot chips has really come roaring up in a few of my interviews.
Yes.
It has become a one.
Yes.
I'm
Mhm.
thankful I finally got my first hot jam donut from the MCG from a Victorian a couple of
Oh,
weeks ago. So
yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
surprising. I've even had some that say they never eat, that they're too nervous, that they have to watch the game, they get a drink and they can't eat. So it's always fascinating to hear everybody's little quirks when it comes to the game. So and then my other
Yeah.
favorite, when you go to the game, you got to find the best place to sit. I got to know where's the best place, ideal
Mhm.
place to sit to watch the footy.
It's really funny. Before I really started coaching seriously, I would always want to sit on the wing, down grounds, like close to the ground, so you could hear the action. But
Hmm.
now that I coach at a higher and more strategic level, I always like to sit high and behind the goals, so I can actually see the running patterns of players.
Hmm. See the movement. That's the one thing that I want to do because I you don't get the elevated step ups over here, especially you're usually ground level. So sometimes it's difficult to see kind of the movements of your group. So it's the one thing I cannot wait. I want to get something maybe second tier when I go so I can see the movement patterns of the group. I know
Yeah,
some of the shows that I watch, the vision that they show, I'm like, that is so cool. So it's very fascinating to see that. So
yeah,
last but not least, my
yeah.
favorite question. I am building a library on this and I'm absolutely loving this. What is your favorite game of footy you have ever seen? Men's, women's, doesn't matter. Live on the telly, doesn't matter. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen?
Oh, it has to be the 2019 AFLW Grand Final, v Adelaide v Carlton. I was the forward line coach, and um, we were hoping to get 25,000 to that game, and because it was the game at Adelaide Oval, and as we were, I don't know, we might have been about 10 minutes in Q1, and I'm sitting in the box, and the football manager and I, Phil Harper, we're kind of looking around, and I was going, "Wow, there's a lot of people here." And then, we've got a stand called the Southern Stand of Adelaide Oval,
Hmm.
and I could just see all these. They look like ants just filling up, and it was just filling and filling. And obviously that day there ended up being 53,000 or 54,000 at that game, and the coaching boxes at Adelaide Oval are actually soundproof, so
Hmm.
you can't hear the crowd. It's really quite quiet, to be honest. And so, when we walked out at the first break, and it was just electric. It was full of Crows supporters, and it's more people than I've ever seen at a women's game. And yeah, it was pretty special, very, very special.
Yeah, fantastic. It was an absolutely insane game. A little marred a little bit, unfortunately, with a couple of knee injuries that kind of dampened it a little bit. But to see 53,000, and I'd heard stories that they said they were only expecting the bottom bowl, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, we need to open up more stands." They opened up another stand. Well, that one got
Mm-hmm.
filled, so and they kind of slowly
Yeah.
started building up. And it was like I guess it was absolutely mental. They were
Mm-hmm.
not expecting to get 53,000 in there, and to basically
Mm-hmm.
sell out Adelaide Oval was absolutely mind-boggling, and it's
Yeah.
absolutely great. And I will say this, SA Footy, I've loved how they've supported, I mean, at least for the AFLW, the AFLW teams, both Port and Adelaide, the fan bases are absolutely mental. Seeing Alberton Oval full for several of the games there for Port this year was absolutely fantastic to
Mm-hmm.
see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hoping it continues to grow, because I think honestly, looking at it, Sample W, I think is some great footy. I was thoroughly impressed with all four of the games that I watched. I cannot wait to keep an eye on it this year.
Yeah.
Um, it'll just be fantastic. So, Coach, this has been an absolutely outstanding chat. I've loved being able to pick your brain a little bit and to talk a little bit of coaching here, because it's not always easy to find people with the experience and the coaching experience that you have. So, I want to thank you for hopping on the podcast today. I genuinely appreciate it.
Thanks, Donnie. It's been an absolute pleasure. We must do this again. And if you need any help with some drills and stuff that with your coaching back in the US of A, you just let me know, because I've got a fistful that I can lend.
Absolutely. I will definitely take you up on that for sure. And then I asked this, I know I've said this in the message too. If there's any of the Woodville West Torrens ladies that like to sit down and have a chat, tell me their story a little bit. I would love to have them on to be able to share their story. Like I said, I had the absolute pleasure of talking with Allie Farrell, who was absolutely fantastic, an amazing player. It's so humble, so great to sit down and have a chat with her. So I'd love to be able to give a microphone to be able to share some of the stories of the SANFLW. So any players there would be fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode. Again, more off-season supporters series. Keep an eye out. We're going to try to do some SANFLW reviews as well, if I can work it out. I'm still kind of working on this, along with stateside reviews during the men's season as well, because I want to be able to support state league footy. I think it is a fantastic initiative. And from what I'm hearing from many of you out there, you appreciate the fact an American wants to talk state league footy. So we're going to keep an eye on that. We're going to do some things this season. So keep track, more coming, and we will be back again very, very soon.